ethanol programs in the United States today. Given the limited amount of carbon that's being saved and the limited amount of energy independence that's being bought, that's not a sustainable strategy long term. Pay more attention to the unintended consequences on food security and environmental security in particular. You should be aware that proponents of ethanol want to increase the ethanol mandate by requiring E10 to be replaced by E20. That means instead of 10% of ethanol going into the gas, 20% will go in. This will require, probably will require some substantial changes in the engineering of automobile fuel chains to happen. But if it happens, it then spreads, it opens the door for raising that mandate from 15 billion gallons to 30 billion gallons, which is their real objective. Pay more attention to the role that trade and technology can play in lowering the cost of food security. Ask more questions about cellulosic biofuels. We shouldn't repeat with cellulosics the mistakes that we made with corn-based ethanol, assuming that the claims for cost and efficiency and environmental friendliness are true, because the costs clearly are higher than alternatives, and the environmental effects may also be higher than the alternatives. The alternatives typically are wind and solar, and if you have a limited number of dollars to invest in clean energy, that's probably a better place to invest in. I'll stop there.
Well, Rob, this was terrific. We have just about a minute or two for any questions. That's a huge amount of territory to cover. Yeah, Brian?
Well, I guess I'd like you to help me develop an argument for policymakers to see that a greater amount of integration into world market may reduce their average cost of obtaining grain or whatever, but it also may expose them to much higher volatility and much higher risk. Therefore, and we've seen that in the past year, both in financial markets and in commodity markets. Tell me what kind of argument you would deploy to argue against that you want to protect yourself from volatility by.
D. Gale Johnson wrote an interesting article in the wake of the first food crisis in 1972-74, where he showed that over half of the price shock and supply shortage was attributable not to production problems, but to policy problems, particularly trade intervention on the part of the European community, which went from high import duties to export taxes to keep grain supplies inside. It's the best quantitative analysis of the effect of trade policy, the adverse effect of trade policy on food security. Most of the rest of it is logic. But after he did his analysis, he was the first person to float the idea that rather than building up commodity reserves, we ought to build up financial reserves, create a window at the IMF, let developing countries access that window when their import needs or import costs surge.
But is there a disjuncture here between the ideal policy and the actual situation faced by a country's policymakers when this kind of the extant regime is parametric, right? I mean,
yeah, but in terms of policy instruments, there's a variety of things that we could do. We, through the APEC, the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum, we had a strategy to get the members of APEC to agree to forswear export controls amongst that membership, which embraces a fair portion of both the grain production capacity and the grain consumption. And we were there until 2000, until 9/11 in 2001. The United States backed off. They are back at the table now. recognize that this is not, the food weapon is not a weapon that they need to keep in their arsenal. So I think there is the possibility the next year or two to get a commitment from the major exporters that they will not impose short supply export controls.
So if that's credible, then.
Yeah, but the sort of currency reserves that you're talking about protects a country from having foreign currency shortfalls to buy the food, but it doesn't protect the population from higher prices. I mean, you're not suggesting that they shouldn't pass on the higher price to the consumer.
No, I'm not suggesting that. But I think if you do the two things together, if you ban export controls and you help poor countries stay in the bidding, you won't have as large a price shock. And you then, the third thing I would add is that for the poor, you have to have focused food distribution systems. But that's true in this country as well as poor countries. The poor suffer the most, and so rather than generalize the benefit, we try to deliver food stamps, WIC,
But you think exposing them to that level of volatility is fine?
Well, yes, caveat. We have doubled the price volatility for commodities like corn by linking them to oil, because oil is roughly twice as volatile in price as food. And so this, I didn't, it's in the notes, but I didn't talk about it, but that's another externality of this ethanol policy that is just insidious.
Well, folks, with that very provocative point, we're going to have to end today. But thanks, Rob, very much indeed. I think maybe